So I used to tell a story that I didn't have a problem with drugs or alcohol. I was just like everybody else, but my uncle was killed. So then that made me have a problem. So I had an excuse. So people couldn't look at me and say, you know, he's an alcoholic or he's an addict. I wanted people to be like, oh, something really bad happened to him. That's why, you know. But the reality is now, when I did all this self work, right, and I'm so much older now, and I have so much more mental clarity, is I was always an alcoholic and a drug addict. The trauma of finding my uncle killed like that. Look, the guilt, the paranoia, the depression, the fear. I mean, it was just so much. Yeah, it was. That set the drinking and drug use into a whole nother level.
Welcome to the Just Live podcast. I'm your host, Olivia Stevens, and I'm inviting you in on my personal journey of learning and discovering how to live a life with more connection, joy, and purpose. I'll be sitting down with people from all walks of life to dive into topics including trauma, mental health, mindfulness, the nuances of love and relationships, and much more. I hope these conversations empower you to expand on what serves you, release what doesn't, and just live. Welcome to the Just Live podcast. I'm your host, Olivia Stevens. You can call me Liv. And in today's episode, I sit down with a good friend of mine, Michael Reuter. Mike is a business owner, a content creator, and a mental health advocate. And in our conversation today, he shares with me details about a very significant tragedy that happened in his life and how the trauma from that has impacted his struggle with addiction and substance abuse. What I loved most about this conversation was that Mike made it a point to say that everybody's addiction or struggles with substances can look very different, and it's not necessarily what we label it or what we call it, but that people are suffering and that people can get help and they can work through it. I hope you enjoy it. Please do bear in mind though that I am not a medical professional, not a psychologist. I'm not a mental health professional. If you need help, please seek professionals. Thank you so much. See ya.
I'm so excited to be the first guest, correct?
Very first
on the
guest.
Just Live podcast.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad that you're here.
Excuse me, for those of you just listening, I'm cracking a nitro cold brew.
Oh, okay. You got to stay caffeinated.
Yeah, it's necessary.
Take your first sip. I'll let you enjoy that for a minute. If I had any caffeine this morning, my heart would be like pumping through my chest.
Really?
Yeah. I drink decaf coffee in the morning.
My mom does decaf coffee. I don't see the point.
The point is...
However, as someone who drinks non-alcoholic beer, I'm sure other people would say,
exactly, what's the point?
Right.
We'll get to that later.
I do.
Before we get started, though, I have to do a little disclaimer and let anyone listening or viewing know that I am not a psychologist or a medical professional, and neither is Mike here. So we're just here talking about our own personal experiences, opinions. If you need any medical advice or health advice, please seek a medical professional.
Yes.
Another disclaimer before we get started is that we're going to dive into some topics, including substance abuse, mental health, suicide. So if any of those topics are sensitive to anybody, let this serve as a disclaimer.
Wonderful.
So for those who don't know, why don't we tell everyone a little bit about who you are?
Okay. Let's see. I am a 36-year-old, nice, young, I could say young, right? Still young man.
I think so.
I'm from Timonium area. I've lived in Baltimore City for about 15 years. I am in the real estate industry, title and escrow specifically. I have 3 nieces, 1 nephew. My family and I are very close. What else do you want to know?
Well, I guess I can add to that. So you are a business owner.
Unfortunately.
Entrepreneur. You are a content creator.
Yes, I love creating content. I'm just diving back into it. So
you're a rapper.
I love to rap. Notice I said I love to rap, not I'm a rapper.
Okay, got it. So you love to rap, but you do have a video online that has over 3 million views of you rapping at a wedding.
I don't know the exact amount, but 3.2 million.
Oh, okay. 3.2 million. Yes. So there's that. You're also a Batman impersonator.
That was just a recent funny piece of content.
Okay. So you're not going to save Baltimore.
I'm not going to save Baltimore.
Okay.
I'd love to, but I think it's beyond saving.
Got it. So I know people are going to be really disappointed to hear, but today we're not going to talk about title insurance or real estate.
I'm not disappointed.
Me either. But I do want to talk about, you recently created a documentary about your life, and a lot of the documentary discusses a very significant event that happened in your life. Mm-hmm. So I would like to go back to that and talk about it, tell people, what happened.
Yeah. Well, so the documentary was actually, I'll backtrack a little bit. Yeah. It started off as me. I've been connected to some amazing people in my life. One of the people involved with the documentary, his name's Rafael Alvarez. He was a writer for the Baltimore Sun. He worked closely with David Simon, creator of The Wire. He actually worked as a writer on The Wire and things like that. Him and I developed a really strong bond and relationship. And at one point, he was like writing a book about this story that I'll tell you about in a second. But it was too emotional at the time. I couldn't go through with it. We stopped, but he's always been kind of in my life since as like a mentor and, creative director in certain ways for different projects and things. And then through Raphael and another friend, Jason Filippo, I got connected to the creator and producer of the documentary. His name is Richard Yeagley, and he's like just super talented, like videographer, creator, producer, director, storyteller, like amazing. So I went to Raphael and Richard, and I said, hey, I want to do a project, I'd like your guys' help. And really all I wanted was like a 10-minute motivational, like life storytelling type of thing.
Right.
Because I love these videos online. I highly recommend everyone to go watch them to seek motivation and encouragement. They're called Goalcast videos.
Okay.
They're just so awesome. Like, it's about people who have been through like extreme adversity and come out on the other side and things like, it's amazing. So I watched those and I loved them. So I kind of wanted to create like my own version of a Goalcast video. Okay. And they're usually like about 10 minutes of someone telling their story and how they overcame certain things or whatever.
Sure.
Hardship and whatnot. It turned into like just going further and further. And then Rich was like, we should just make a documentary. And I was like, I would love to, like, if you have the time. So he had the time and we went down that road. So what we did was we made a documentary. The first half of the documentary is like archival footage, interviews and things like that, kind of telling the story of what I went through and what happened. And then the second half was like him following me, and we were working towards like preparing a speech to go on stage and share the story and try to help other people. Got it. So the story is, it all comes from something that happened to me when I was young. I was 23, working with my uncle. We worked in jewelry together. Mm-hmm. And we got set up. The whole story is just crazy. Like, it's a movie. Yeah. I mean, literally. I thought I was living in a movie. Yeah. Unfortunately, it was a horror movie. But what it led to, the significant event that like created my initial trauma in my life and kind of set me off down the wrong path for many years was I found my uncle murdered. So he was shot 10 times in his face and 5 times in his body. I went to our store the day after Christmas, December 26, 2009, because he wasn't answering his phone. And when I got there, I was real happy because his car was there. Yeah. I was like, good, because he hasn't been answering his phone. Right. And then as soon as I got to the door and walked in, my heart went to my stomach. Yeah. Like Livia, I'm telling you, I'm like repeating this. And as I am, the exact details of visualizations in my head, like it's never gone out all these years later, nothing. So it's like the pictures were off the wall, and there's, I started seeing little bullet casings, and further I walked to the back of the store. I eventually ended up finding them, It was hard. And that started a lot. What, crazy enough, it's going to sound nuts to people. I'm grateful for that. It took over a decade to be able to say something like that. Yeah. Of like work, therapy, of addiction, of, like self medicating. Like, it's been a long road, right? But talking to you today, although sometimes it can be hard to talk about, I'm in a really good place mentally from it. Better than I've ever been.
Well, thank you very much for being open enough to talk about it. And I know that by being able to talk about it, like, you're going to affect other people's lives in a positive way. So I want to talk a little bit more about the story, because I watched the documentary and I find it interesting and really fascinating, just as far as like the case goes. After you found your uncle and then you were sitting down with police, you immediately had an idea of maybe who had done this.
Yeah. So when I found him, I'd like to add how tough I am. The first thing I did was I dropped my knees. I held him. I realized he was dead. Then I went and grabbed our guns. We had some shotguns underneath the desk, and I went looking around. I was like, just like a maniac. I go looking around to see if anyone's there. I didn't run. I'm like, who did this? I was furious. Yeah. The emotions, all the different feelings. ran through kind of the building that our office was in. And then I ended up going out the front door up to a Goodwill that was around the other side. And I'm holding a loaded shotgun and I'm yelling, help. And people were like dropping to the ground. Like, I'm going to rob the Goodwill. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, what am I doing? I have a loaded shotgun in a store. And some fantastic people came down and actually like helped me. One woman was like a social worker. I still would love to find her. To this day, I never have. She stayed with me like the whole time.
And this happened the day after Christmas, right?
So, and my uncle moved to town from Texas. Who was always really close with him. He was my dad's brother. Yeah. He was like best friend. So close, like loved him. He was amazing. And he came, it was like 2008. So the market was crashing. Yeah. Everyone who had stuff was selling their stuff. He was in the business of buying and selling precious metals. So people were selling their Rolexes and their watches and their diamonds and their jewelry and their gold. Okay. So I was a advertising and marketing major. I was helping him get sales, basically, like find people who wanted to sell things, you know, estate sales, personal, whatever. And we travel around, meet people and buy it from them. Okay. During that time, I realized it was a, you know, lucrative business, and I loved being with him every day. Like my life was amazing. Like, you know, you're working with your best friend. It was so cool. So, and I was learning a lot about that industry. He knew it inside and out, but he wasn't really good and savvy with like the computer and all that. So we really like provided value to one another, and it was a really fun time. We came across somebody who had, you know, sold us his grandmother's diamond. Turns out obviously it was stolen. Got it. And then other small items, pieces of gold here and there. The diamond was the biggest thing. It was like a 3-carat diamond. I remember we gave him like $8,000 or $9,000 and we sold it for like 10. Wow. Okay. I had documentation about that sale, which came back into play later with the FBI. Okay. But so after I found him killed, you know, I ended up in the homicide room in Baltimore City, down on the block there, is where it is. Yeah. And I was in there with detectives, and they were recording me, and they're just asking me who it could be. And like everything's running through my mind. I wasn't super crystal clear, but the one, like the highest suspect in my mind was this guy. Only because as of recently, other than just like selling us some stuff that we were like, maybe, you know, we didn't, at the time we bought it, we thought it was his grandmother's, but like maybe it's not. But it you know, we don't have any right to say anything to him at this point. So he did, after that, he approached my uncle and I, and he asked us about he wanted us to buy stolen jewelry from him. He was like, I got these gangsters, these guys from New York. I got all this gold. Do you guys want to buy it? You know, whatever. Okay. And my uncle was like a cowboy. He was no saint. He had done things in his life and whatever. He was a great person. Yeah. But he was no saint, you know? So he was exploring it, you know, kind of like maybe, you know, whatever. Yeah. A couple more meetings with this guy. Eventually, I told him, you know, I don't want anything to do with it. I've never done anything illegal, really. Maybe stole some gum from the Royal Farm as a kid or something like that. Yeah. But, like, I wasn't comfortable. I mean, I remember one time he was coming in, the guy who had killed my uncle was coming in to talk to us. I was like, I don't want to be here. Like, they know we have cash. Yeah. He says he's got these gangsters. Like, they could just be, like, coming to get us, like, whatever. So I stood in the back with the loaded gun when the guy was coming, and my uncle came back and he was like, just go across the street. Like, cause he wasn't scared of anything. Got it. So I went across the street to Dunkin' Donuts, had a coffee, and then he called me and said, come on back. And he told him, you know, we're not going to go forward with you guys or whatever. Christmas night, I'm with my family, fast forward, my uncle, everybody. We're having a great night. He says we have a meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. or whatever, the day after Christmas. I'm like, all right, we'll meet there. I woke up the day after Christmas hungover because I went to my girlfriend at the time's house and we were drinking all night. So I was like, I'm going home. I'm just going to bed. So I didn't go to the meeting. The meeting was where he got killed.
So he was meeting with this guy? Or
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So if I would have not been hungover, alcohol saved my life, which is crazy to say as an alcoholic. Right. At one point, it saved my life. I mean, I was hungover and I was like, I'm going home and going to bed, which wasn't... That was typical for me back then and at the time because I was drinking a lot. And so that's when I woke up and I called him and he didn't answer. And I was like, I got to figure out what's going on. So I went to the store and found him all those hours later. But, you know, a couple different decisions and I would have been there with him. Right. Which played into a lot of guilt for me too. I'm sure. Because I at first, you know, I was like, I want to be there. Yeah. You know, looking back now, I'm glad I wasn't.
Yeah, I'm glad you weren't either.
But I still would love an opportunity to be. I mean, that'll never change. So.
Yeah, I understand that. So after your uncle's death, you gave this information to police, but nothing ever came of it. I mean, did they arrest this guy? Did they have any like?
Yeah. So if you watch the documentary, there's clips of the recording of me talking with the homicide detective.
Yeah,
it's just a
I saw
portion
that.
of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably like an hour-long interview. So in the documentary, the portion of it shows is just a few
Quick
minutes snippet
clip,
of me saying it's this person who, after he was killed, I started like kind of following the guy on
Really?
social media and in person. Like I never actually followed him in person and found him, but like I would go out under the influence of drugs and alcohol and like be just like a maniac. Like I need to confront this person. I'm so glad I never crossed paths with him. But there's a lot of things that happened. He was posting things on social media that I had saved that were taken down, that like it was just the words and stuff. You could tell, you know, that he did it. Then people were reaching out to me, you know, over the years. I had people reach out to me and say, hey, I mean, there was one guy reached out to me. He said, hey, I'm sleeping with this girl. She used to sleep with this guy. He would brag to her that he killed your uncle. I mean, I got a Facebook message that said that.
That's crazy.
Things like that happened.
So how can there not be anything done sooner? Because I know.
Well, Baltimore City had the case.
Yeah.
And the detective was awesome. I will never forget his name, Detective Vinny. But it's Baltimore City.
Yeah.
So like, how many murders are there in Baltimore City and how many resources do they have? I mean, I heard something recently on I think it was on a TV show or something that, you know, the average homicide detective should work 2 cases a year. And sometimes back in the day and even currently in Baltimore City, sometimes they can work 2 cases a week.
Jeez.
Or a month or whatever.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Got it.
So I think they did their best and just, you know, nothing really transpired of it. Now what happened, which is a blessing, was this is crazy. This is like just crazy. But my dad had been writing letters to the FBI, and they were like, because he never gave up on it. Like my dad never gave up on finding the person and committing him, you know, getting justice for who killed his uncle, or who killed his brother, my uncle. So he was writing letters to the FBI. You got to look at this guy. This is who did it. Blah blah blah. I had gotten to a point in my life where I was like, you know, using so much self-medicating and all that I kind of was like, almost before I got sober ever, was like sick and tired of like, so I kind of blocked it out in my brain.
Okay.
It was like, I can't help anymore. I can't do this anymore. Like if I'm going to live, I have to move forward. You know? Because for so many years I lived paranoid in fear that this person's going to kill me. Yeah. Why wouldn't he kill me? He knows I'm the only one with any information. Right. You know? So my dad's writing these letters. Eventually the FBI took the letters seriously because the killer of my uncle had committed another crime. My uncle killed in 2009. 2012, he gets a crew of people. They kidnap a jewelry store owner, hold him by impersonating police officers. They're pretending they're police officers.
Oh my God.
My understanding is they pretended they're police officers. He had a whole ring of people, 8 of them. Pulled him over, gun to his mouth, everything. Took him to his house, tied him up, told him they're going to kill him if he tells anybody. Didn't kill him. Stole all of his jewelry, all his stuff. Took it across state lines and sold it. Got caught for this. The guy ended up telling. They didn't kill him. Got caught for it, and the FBI took this case because it was across state lines. Got it. And then they convicted him of 30 years for that. And then all the people under him got time as well. Wow. He got the most. He was the ringleader. So because of that, in 2012, in my dad's letters, they said these are very similar. We should cross-reference it. And then my dad in 2012, when he did it, that was still wide open. I can't remember exactly when the FBI picked up the case, but I got approached in like 2015 or 14 maybe. Okay. I can't remember. Probably 2015. I was approached that the FBI picked up the case, and then I worked with them for like 2 years, I'd say. What was that like? Terrible. Like great, but terrible. Like I was running a title company, not the one I have now at the time, but I was, you know, the head person and running it. It was a 30-person organization. I was deep into my addiction of like alcohol and drugs, cocaine, whatever. And at nighttime, I was going over to the United States Attorney's office in Baltimore City with the U.S. Attorney and the FBI. And it was crazy. And I'm like, you know, giving them all the information I have and going over things. And they would tell me some things, other things they wouldn't. So I was a little blind to it. Yeah. I remember like going in there, having the meetings, doing whatever I had to do. And then like sitting in the parking lot and just like crying so hard because like I couldn't tell anybody because it was like an open case. I also was never the type of person that wanted people to feel sorry for me. I also didn't want my family to know how much pain I was going through and what I was going through, because I didn't want to bring any more pain to them. So like the whole thing, I was like boxed in this cage of like,
yeah,
I'm just screwed. Like I was in this mental prison. Like it was terrible. So that really fueled my addiction too.
Yeah.
The drugs and the alcohol. But I know I was always relentless. I kept moving forward. And I eventually, what happened was, this is the part where it gets real crazy. My dad's writing the letters to the FBI. FBI picks up the case. I'm meeting the FBI and working with them a little bit here and there. Then my dad gets sick with cancer. The doctor says you got 6 months to live. You know, I'm sitting there in the hospital with my dad and my mom, and he was real sick. And just the doctor came out with this blank stare and was like, "You have like 6 months to live. You know, you have pancreatic and liver cancer, stage 4." Yeah, so we were like, "Oh my gosh, that was a whole nother life changing event." But the day my dad died, fast forward to June 17th, 2016, the day he died is when the FBI came out with public press release saying that we're going to be convicting Steven Ylizarev of killing Wayne Reuter.
Wow.
So my dad was the reason why they looked at it and cross-referenced it. The day he died, and you know, I like to believe went up and became our angel in heaven with my uncle. You know, so 2009, December 23rd, he's killed. June 17th, 2016, the same day my dad dies, is the day the FBI says they're convicting this person. It's just really weird.
Yeah, that's not a coincidence, I don't think.
I don't know. I mean, I've had my own theories, but I just think I believe in angels. So
divine
it's like,
intervention, yeah.
Yeah. So,
okay.
Like I said, there it goes. It's like a movie. I mean,
it is a movie. So I know that you said that obviously when your uncle passed away, you were 23 years old. You were kind of doing what the normal 23-year-old does. You're finishing school, you go out, drink, partying. After your uncle passed away, and that's 6 years before your dad passed away and before you found out about the conviction, what was life like for you, and what was your relationship to alcohol, and how did it change after your uncle passed away?
Oh gosh, those are great questions. And I've thought about this a lot, because I always wanted to tell my version of my story the way that I wanted people to perceive it. And then now, after I've done so much rehab and therapy, like, I tell the reality, like the real story. So I used to tell a story that I didn't have a problem with drugs or alcohol. I was just like everybody else, but my uncle was killed. So then that made me have a problem. So I had an excuse. It was a self-defense mechanism, maybe. So people couldn't look at me and say, you know, he's an alcoholic or he's an addict. I wanted people to be like, oh, something really bad happened to him, that's why, you know. But the reality is now, when I did all this self-work, right, and I'm so much older now and I have so much more mental clarity, is I was always an alcoholic and a drug addict. Like I always was an addict, like looking back at my behaviors and everything, like since before this happened.
Okay.
But after the trauma of finding my uncle killed like that, look, the guilt, the paranoia, the depression,
the fear.
I mean, it was just so
pain.
Much. Yeah, it was, that set the drinking and drug use into a whole nother level.
Okay.
Because now I had an excuse to use whenever I wanted.
Right.
And I was trying to numb the pain, you know?
Yeah. So it's interesting that you say that. So you're saying that the story you kind of told before was that you weren't an alcoholic, that you didn't struggle. Like, can you
I was trying to, basically it would be, I was trying to believe in my own mind as well as tell others that I didn't have a problem with drugs or alcohol. But my uncle was killed and I found him that way. And that turned me into an alcoholic and a drug addict.
Okay.
But now, all these years later, it takes a long, you know, when you're talking about addiction, alcoholism, addiction, whatever, it takes somebody, they're on their own journey. And it takes a long time to get to that with certainty moment that you know, without a doubt, that you fit the disease model and you suffer from the disease of addiction, right? So for me, I never wanted to believe that. I never wanted to think I had a problem. I wanted to think my problems were just the fact that I found my uncle murdered and my dad died and I've been through all this hard stuff, and drugs and alcohol, it's just I get to use that because of it. But really, whether my dad and uncle died at all, looking back, my dad dying and my uncle dying were the most beautiful things that could have ever happened to me personally, although I'd rather have them here still, because those were the events that made me drove me so far to a rock bottom that forced me to eventually be up against the wall and have to get sober, and then go down this road of recovery and realize that, like, hey, like, you don't have to live this way. You know, you can forgive yourself or whatever, you know, so.
Sure. So I'm very much into like personal development and growth. I follow a lot of psychologists, mental health professionals online. One in particular, Nicole LaPera, she wrote a book that was like a #1 New York Times bestseller called How to Do the Work. Talks about trauma, talks about like inner healing. She recently posted that addiction is a symptom, that it's basically a response. She doesn't think that it's a disease. She thinks that it's a response to trauma or to, you know, inner wounding, that there is no like a gene for addiction or gene for alcoholics. So some people used to think that like, oh, this is passed down. It's hereditary, that there is no gene indicator for it. There might be there might be some people genetically that are more susceptible on like a spectrum to fall more susceptible to addiction, but that they don't think that it's like a brain disorder or a disease in that nature.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, my first reaction is to disagree, but the reality of like my life is just, I just know me, what I've been through and my journey and what it's taken me to get to where I am to be able to live happy and healthy. Yeah. So I don't really ever think too much or go too much into like the science and the details and the, you know, are you an addict? Are you an alcoholic? Are you recovered? Are you whatever? Like there's so many different terminologies and different thoughts and whatever. So like whether it happens from trauma or whether you're born that way, either way, like you're suffering. So like there needs to be a way to be able to help people like that. However, I don't think from my personal experience that the only way someone can be an alcoholic or a drug addict is through some sort of triggering event or trauma, because my thought is that you're wired that way, and that a certain percentage of people are wired with that, you know, brain chemistry, right? Where like your response to pain, trauma, suffering, joy, like whatever, and then you create these neural pathways in your brain, and like that's just like the response that you have, and you go to it, and then you're on a cycle and a wheel of like using. I mean, that's just my experience with it. So I don't know. I would say that people can suffer from the disease without trauma, but
or maybe that there's trauma that's happened that they might not even be aware of.
Correct. Yeah.
So like childhood trauma, I think they're doing more and more like research and realizing like how much of an influence like what happens in your childhood, even if it's not like a big T trauma, like what
I love
suffered.
that you said big T. I'm big on the little and the big T.
I thought that was on Do Not Disturb.
That's okay. I like that. I just learned about big T's and little T's like in my last treatment center.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot because when you talk about big T's and little T's, so you're right. Yeah. I mean, like a little T, I'm talking to someone recently. They were bullied as a kid in a slight manner, and then they became a man, and they were like, you know, they wanted to be masculine and like try and stuff that pain or whatever.
Right.
But that feeling of someone treating them that way created a little trauma that then they carried with them into their adulthood. Right. That they're made to feel that way based on like those patterns of events.
Right. And some people believe like something like that, for instance, or say example, like a parent that's disconnected or a parent that doesn't regulate their emotions. And like as a child, you don't understand that that's not your fault. You think that, you know, if a parent isn't connecting with you or loving with you, like there must be something wrong with you or how you're expressing yourself. So then you like suppress your feelings to be connected and to like receive that love that you need. Yeah. I guess when it comes to addiction, some people think that there's some sort of pain or suffering inside, and the addiction or the substance or whatever, it doesn't even have to be substances. I mean, it could be, you know, gambling, shopping, social media. Right. Sex.
No, right. It's
that those things are just
fitness.
A release. I mean, fitness, even overworking, overproduction. Right. That those things are just a release or an escape from like the pain that you're feeling. So even though you might not, or someone else might not be like, oh, like my childhood was fine, there could be these little T traumas, like, you know, a parent not letting you express your needs, or a parent disciplining you and like leaving you alone, for instance, and not connecting with you, or, you know, a parent that's checked out. Things like that can all lead, so they say, to this.
Yeah. And it is like, I actually on this topic, I did some extensive like therapy with this place I had found, and I can go into it in a little bit, but it's the most incredible therapy I've ever done in my life. And we did for the first time. It was when I was finally ready to go be like, I want to visit my dad's death. I want to visit my uncle's murder. I want to process it, and I want to move forward from it. And it took me over a decade to be able to get to that point to do that.
Wow.
But when I did, the professionals that helped me, they were like, forget this event of your uncle. Like, we need to go back so much further.
Wow, yeah.
And they did. They went back further to before I was born.
Wow.
And then to when you're in the womb of your mother.
Mm-hmm.
And really, you look at the relationship that your parents had with their parents and their upbringing, and then like how that affects you and your upbringing. And it's just absolutely crazy. You know? And you can go so deep.
Yeah,
the traumas can be things that people have that they're not even aware of sometimes. And then that creates behavioral patterns that continue for the rest of your life. So like where I am now with recovery is like, I don't take it for granted, but the strongest and healthiest I've ever been in my life because of this work I've done going all the way back and understanding the reasons why I was making decisions I was making.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think that's so important because I think a lot of people, especially in society, there's like this stigma against, oh, like someone can either use alcohol or they can't, or like someone can handle alcohol or they can't. But what really is, like you said, you went with these therapists and went so much deeper to understand like maybe some things in your past or pain that were like causing you to reach for these substances.
Yeah, it was like decision-making skills and triggers and, you know, that always led me to this. And then the reality of it is I love getting high and I love getting drunk. Like, I love that. I still love it. Like, I would love to do it.
Yeah.
But I got to a point, you know, so however you want to chalk it up, like the most important thing for someone with a problem with drugs or alcohol, I think, is the ability to identify that you have a problem, right? And then how big is that problem? So like I got to a point finally, which I'm so grateful for, to where I know with certainty that like if I use alcohol or drugs, like if I have one beer today, I know by Christmas time I'm drinking a fifth of vodka a day or whatever. Like, you know, and I'm doing cocaine 5 or 6 days a week. And I know with certainty, like there is zero doubt in my head where one drink or one pill or one line leads. Zero doubt, like literally zero. It takes I think it's hard for people to get to that point. Yeah. You know? So what keeps me from using mainly, other than, you know, there's a lot, but what really keeps me from it is like, I know the certainty of where those actions lead me. Yeah. So like I won't make those decisions, you know, because it's not worth it for me.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned earlier when you were talking about the FBI and you said that you were kind of experiencing all this pain, but you felt like you couldn't talk to anybody about that. Yeah. And I wanted to talk to you about how you think that affected your grief process and then the process of, you know, having to go back and revisit everything.
Yeah. If I had to go through my whole life again up to this point, like I'm grateful for everything that's ever happened to me, all the decisions I made. I'm grateful that I'm a drug addict and alcoholic. Like I've just completely kind of like 180 flipped the way I think about my mindset on everything. Like everything's mindset, everything, absolutely everything. All the solutions to any problems, like, you know, you take a pill and that's going to like mask the symptoms, but like the solution is like go rewire yourself, then change the relationship with how you think about things. Yeah. So like if I could go back, I could decrease and limit the amount of pain and suffering I had by so much, knowing what I know now, which I have no regrets. I'm grateful I had to go through all that because now I get to live the rest of my life, you know, knowing what I know. But yeah, I was like too strong. I didn't want people. My thought, like, I'm so important. It was such a victim mentality, such a selfish mentality, like that. Like, I don't need help, you know. Yeah. I don't need attention. I don't need people to feel sorry for me. I don't need, like, I can conquer this. When like the reality was, I went on like that for a decade or more, you know, until I actually raised my hand and said I need help and broke down and like let people help me and gave up my control. You know, I didn't see any changes.
Why did you think you couldn't ask for help or you couldn't tell people that you were struggling?
Well, at the time, the drug use and the alcohol were so extreme, especially around the time my dad died, that I was very embarrassed about it. I had a lot of like shame and guilt. I wasn't treating people in my life correctly. Like specifically the most important people to me, my family. Yeah. Like I hope I don't cry saying this. This part is like deep for me. Like I've always been good to my family and love them unconditionally like they do with me, luckily. But my mindset at the time was that like I can use drugs and alcohol and fuck you because I pay for things. Literally, that's what I thought. I actually thought that. I actually thought like my family can yell at me and be worried if I'm going to wake up the next day and like do all this stuff because like no one needs to help me with anything. Like I financially support myself. I give everyone else money. Like that was my thoughts, which was crazy because my family didn't give a shit about that.
Right.
You know, they knew I was sick and I did my best to hide it from them, but it was so deep and it was so far gone that like,
yeah.
I mean, there's friends that I'm sure will even listen to this episode we have and like they'll bring them back to memories of like I have a lot of people that helped me and supported me over the years.
I know in the documentary I talked about at one point you were sober for a year.
Yeah.
And then when the gentleman was convicted,
yeah,
then you went to like Atlantic City or something.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. And the wisdom I have now is so different. Like I looked at that. I wasn't really even sober. I would say
Okay.
the correct way to identify that period in my life now is that I wasn't using. Like I wasn't drinking. I wasn't using drugs. I was working out every day. I was in fitness. I propelled my business forward.
Yeah.
That's when I started doing social media. I saw so much progress and I was like, this is amazing. But I do remember, and I know for a fact, that every single day I couldn't wait to drink a beer and do a line of cocaine. I could not wait. But I had enough willpower to keep me from using because I was so far gone, Livy. I mean, I'm talking so sick. Panic attacks every day, depression, sweats. It was just every single day. And I knew when I didn't drink, that didn't happen as often.
Yeah.
You know? So I needed to be strong as I could because there was a court date set for when I was going to have to face the person who killed my uncle, right?
Got it.
So I was like, I have to be my strongest self for this. So that gave me enough willpower to like literally start going to the gym 7 days a week, and I got like ripped up for me, and in turn like all the other things in my life got a lot better, and I realized without drugs and alcohol my life is a lot better. But I had never done any work on like recovery from addiction or trauma or alcohol or anything. I just wasn't using.
You just were like abstaining
so when
from it.
when the case ended, the trial ended, which it wasn't a trial, and it was going to be a trial. I ended up pleading guilty, and that was a whole process in itself. But when the day that was over and finalized, I went to Atlantic City with one of my best buddies, Mike Rocco, and we went to Atlantic City and we got I was like, let's go, you know, this is behind me now, you know. That was my thought. I was going to tell myself, it's behind me now, I can move forward. Yeah. So I started drinking again. That like escalated so fast.
You ended up in the hospital, right?
Yeah, 4 months later.
4 months later, you're in the hospital.
Yeah. I probably could have died. I know they said I had like near toxic levels of cocaine and alcohol in my system, and like where it got to was really I just had no reason for living. I thought I was like, I don't even want to live because my uncles, I thought I was going to feel better on the other side of this, but I was like, there's no reason now. Like I was trying to get justice for my family and for my father who passed away, my uncle and whatever, and now that comes. And I remember crying to my brother, like, what's the point, you know? Like, you just make money and you wake up every day and you like, what's the point? You know, I didn't have any point or purpose, and I was so lost. And I actually like drank myself at the point when I ended up going to the hospital that time, the last time I ever drank. I remember being like I was like crazy. Like I couldn't form thoughts. I was paranoid. Like my brain was so far gone. Yeah. It was nuts. It was so scary, you know? But, you know, I went to the hospital.
Then what happened?
Well, I woke up. I told my mom on the way to the hospital that I would never. I told her, Mom, I'll never do this again. And I'm crying, and I was just like so messed up, you know. And I said, I'll never do this again. Like I promise, I never will. Like I was scared for my own life actually at that point. Wow. So I went to the hospital. They helped me, and from that car ride forward with my mom, like I've never looked back on alcohol. It's been like, I never want alcohol to be in my life ever again, you know? Yeah. So because I just, you know, I know what happens, but that scared me enough to go get help. And that's when I went to rehab for the first time. So okay. I mean, I was so sick. It took me 6 days at my mom's house in detox. Like I was shaking, I had tremors, I was so sick. It was crazy. I was so sick. Like, oh my gosh. So people have hangovers, and I'm like, I had
don't
one of
even
those-
know.
I had that for 6 days.
Yeah.
Like throwing up, shaking, sweats, panic attacks,
Jeez.
depression, suicidal
Anxiety,
thoughts, anxiety, everything. So then when I went to rehab, like I actually was like, had this huge sense of relief. I did one thing at that treatment center. I learned with certainty that I'm an alcoholic and I cannot drink alcohol. But that was my only problem. Alcohol led me to other things.
Right.
So it was just alcohol. That's what I thought. I made the mistake of thinking.
Okay.
I learned with certainty that I'm two people. You know, I see the world through the eyes of Michael as alcoholic. I see the world through Michael as the eyes of somebody with clarity. So I did struggle with other substance abuse after that I've since gotten help with.
Can you speak to like other addictions like we mentioned earlier? Like, and how does that play in your life? Like, do you find yourself, you know, addicted to social media or addicted to improving yourself or working too hard? You know, I know.
Yeah. I don't know. I think for me personally, like I get addicted to, I latch on to different things,
Okay.
right? And then those become the priority in my life. So it's been work, it's been fitness, it's been, and then when I'm using drugs or alcohol, it's that is the priority,
Right.
Like by far, that fuels everything else. Right now in my life, I'm like so balanced, but I did so much work. Like I did so much work to get to this point where like I don't think I overdo or underdo anything. You know, this is like the first time in my life I've ever had like what I feel is like a complete stabilized balance of everything.
What did the work look like for you? Like what, like in specifically, like what do you think helped you come to a place of balance?
So after I got clean from alcohol and cocaine, I was cool and I started trying to live my life again and work and whatever. And I started taking Adderall because once again, my problem was alcohol. If I did alcohol, I did cocaine. And if I did that, alcohol and cocaine, I would do anything anyone gave me. But Adderall was like going to help me.
Right. It's a
with work.
prescription.
Yeah, it's prescription and everyone takes it and it's like nothing. It's no big deal.
Sure.
I took one pill, 20 milligrams, whatever, 10. Yeah, I think 5 or 10 at the time was like, man, I was feeling like Superman. And I was working. I started just taking it. I would do it 1 or 2 times a week and then it became 3 or 4. And before you knew it, I was taking it every day. And it was 20 milligrams and then it was 40. Then it was 80.
Oh my
Then
God.
it was 100. Then it was 200. And towards the end of the Adderall addiction, I was taking 200 to 300 milligrams a day. Of
A
Adderall.
day?
Yeah, I was spending $5,000 to $10,000 a month.
And at what
Adderall.
point were you like, this is not right?
After probably about.
Did you say it or did someone else in your
No,
life?
no, I did because I was able to hide it for a long time.
Wow.
Because you got to understand, this is all it's making me do is work. I was so addicted to work. It was crazy. So people like glorified me. Like, wow, look, because I I stopped working at a company and I started a new company and I was
Right.
doing all this stuff and COVID hits and
Right.
I'm buying stocks and I'm learning more about money and financials and I'm growing, my wealth and people's around me. I'm building businesses, whatever.
So maybe not necessarily addicted to work, but addicted to the glory that you got from it, and work was the means to that glory?
No, I was addicted to the work.
Really?
I loved it.
Okay.
I was obsessed. Like right now, I could not go back and build the company that I have again.
Yeah.
I was obsessed. But what drove that success and obsession was Adderall. Like first thing I wanted to do was get high on Adderall. Mm-hmm. Then I wanted to work. And I loved it. Like I was doing 15, 20 hours a day, 7 days a week for several years.
It's just not sustainable.
Right. So I was eating like shit. I was eating just to eat because I was supposed to eat.
Yeah.
Or otherwise I would die. So I was like eating
Like not hungry at all.
$5,000 to $10,000 a month on Adderall, $3,000 a month on Grubhub. I'm serious. I got fat for me. I got up to like 190 some pounds, like no fitness anymore, no balance at all. And the Adderall, like I knew was such a huge problem,
Yeah.
There was a time I went to with my girlfriend at the time. I can't remember, some kind of a trip somewhere. And I had this huge like anxiety and panic attack and I came clean to her, and I was like, I am a complete drug addict. And I had known I had wanted to come clean to the people I love. I just wasn't ready
And
yet.
she had no idea?
Yeah, no.
Wow.
Nobody really did. And then I came clean about that. I think some people close to me might have had an idea I was taking it here or there.
Yeah.
But,
So then,
but I hid myself. So it was really, and I wasn't drunk. So I wasn't doing stupid, I was just working a lot.
yeah.
But I was so sick. Like I couldn't get out of bed without 100 milligrams of Adderall. It's like I literally had to take 100 milligrams of Adderall in the morning just to be able to get out of bed and function throughout the day.
Oh my God.
I don't remember what my heart rate was, what was going on, but I would I would try to go to bed at 2 or 3 in the morning and lay down and then be like, there's a project I have to do just to get up and take more Adderall, just to get high again. So it got to the point where the Adderall was like the priority in my life.
Yeah.
No matter what, all I was doing all day was trying to get Adderall. Once I had my Adderall, then I could do everything else. And I was so sick and tired of it. It was almost worse than the alcohol and the cocaine back then. I was like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
I need help. But I kept trying to help myself and stop. But whenever I'd stop, I'd go into these deep, dark depressions because my chemicals were so messed up. Serotonin levels, dopamine levels, all that stuff. So messed up. I couldn't get off the stuff. I tried 2 weeks. If I get off it, even for 2 weeks, I got to lay there and do nothing.
Yeah.
Like no motivation, no anything. Come to find out, I was like, drove myself into a depression, and I messed up my brain chemicals so badly. And then I finally crashed on it so bad. It's a whole nother long story, but I snapped and went crazy and was in like another like psychosis, and it ended up like got to the point where it's like, I'll do anything in the world to get help.
Yeah.
So I remember being at my mother's house again, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's all too familiar. I thought I was gonna freaking die. And the next day I flew to Florida and went to another rehab recovery center. I was supposed to stay there for 30 days. I stayed for 10.
Okay. Yeah.
But when I left there after being there for 10 days, the reason I left early was a friend of mine is the CEO of this company called Supermind, which is going to be brought to the world soon. It's basically the scaling of a smaller company called Pathwaves. So this is amazing people, and they help you rewire your brain.
Okay.
So I went and did that. That was the most powerful thing I've ever done in my entire life. 10 days of rehab, 20 days of that, 2 weeks of talking to no one, health and fitness. Then I came back into the world. What
did you do to rewire your brain? What did they have you do?
So it's really not that complicated. I mean, for the people who created it is that they do a brain scan on you.
Yeah.
They'll read your brain, and they'll be able to tell you, hey, like you're experiencing anxiety, you sleep this way, you have depression, you have trauma, like we can see whatever. It's nuts. So then the therapy that I experienced with them, which was, like I said, the most incredible thing I've ever done in my life, was I'd go in 20 days in a row for 3 hours. The first hour, I would have a therapist. And the same therapist team I was working with the whole time, amazing. I'm still in touch with them to this day. They saved my life, I like to say.
Yeah.
And we'd talk about things. We'd go all the way back. This is when I went all the way back.
Okay.
Right? And we'd find out why I am the way I am, why I make decisions the way I make them, all this stuff. Then what happens is once you work on your therapy and you decide what you need to fix and you want to fix, to give you an idea, 6 of the 20 sessions were on sleep. So because of how important apparently sleep is.
Yeah.
I wasn't sleeping for 3 years. So I had to learn to sleep again. Right?
Yeah.
And so what happens is they'll put these sensors on your brain in different parts of your brain. So if it's for sleep, they'll put them on like the sleep areas of your brain or whatever. And then you're wearing headphones. The headphones are playing live tones of whatever is going on with your brain waves.
Got it.
And the best way I like to explain it is you're basically like meditating on what you want to be your life. So, people do like meditation, affirmation work, self-talk, positive self-talk. It's sort of like that. And you're like breaking old habits and creating new ones. Yeah. It's real. Okay. Like I open these new pathways. So and I have some specific stories. Like I was able to get triggered to use Adderall and then I was at an event. Someone offered me Adderall or said they take it. And they have it. So I'm like, all of a sudden my brain's like, how do I get it? Should I get it? Oh my gosh, I shouldn't. Oh no, I should. No one will know. I'll just do it this one more time. And then it was like, go do your work. I went in the bathroom real quick and I started talking to my former self who used to make decisions like, yo, we're not doing this. This is how we live anymore, all this stuff. Man, I didn't think about it again until the next day. I realized I went 24 hours without struggling because the struggle isn't just using, it's trying to fight against using. I went 24 hours without even thinking about it again, which was the new pathways that I had opened for myself. Formed. And that happened with my sleep. It happened with the drug use. And then overall, it was just wonderful to like do all this extensive therapy and like learn about myself, because if you know and you understand, then you're able to appropriately make decisions for what you want.
Yeah. And what's right for you in your life.
It's the first time in my life that I've been able to wake up every day transparent, honest, happy with who I am, communicate with somebody else, not have to be perfect, and have no secrets.
That's beautiful.
The best feeling in the world. I don't know why I couldn't do this on all levels sooner in life, but like I said, it's all part of my journey. I don't have any regrets. I have a lot of things that I've done, like I'm not happy about, I'm not proud of, but like I understand why that happened. And by understanding why, I was able to make necessary changes to be the person I actually want to be, you know?
Yeah.
But back in the day, it was like, you know, selfish. It was all about how I want to feel and what I need to do to feel that way, you know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's important for people to go through hard things. I don't want to let me down anymore.
Yeah.
And also, I like a lot of using drugs, alcohol, stuffing pain, things like that. A lot of that was like, as much as it may seem like I loved myself to the outside world and I was successful and all this, my actual perception and feelings about myself were terrible. Like I did not love myself. I loved everybody else and pleasing people and all this shit. But I never loved me, you know? Like I hated me.
Yeah.
But no one would ever have guessed that in a million years, you know?
Right.
But then when you can learn you gotta love yourself first, it sounds so cliche, you know, but it's true.
It is true.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do from there, you know? Like you control you and how you respond to all the other stuff, but you don't control all the other stuff. Real magic is letting bad things happen to you because you can't control certain things.
Right.
Like you can't control what somebody else did.
Exactly.
Like they can control what they did.
Yeah, and you can only control how you respond and what you do moving forward.
Yeah.
There was a scene in the documentary that really kind of struck a chord with me. I think you were on the rooftop of this building.
Yeah.
With what was his name again?
Raphael. That's
Raphael. Thank you. And you guys are kind of, you know, talking about your sobriety, and you said something along the lines of, like, life is really long, you know, because a lot of times people say, like, life is so short, like this, that, and the other. But in fact, like, life is also very long. And so you've got this, I guess, long journey ahead of you still. So can you kind of elaborate on what you meant by that quote? Because it really kind of resonated with me. I'm
really glad that you, like, that kind of stuff sticks out. It makes me feel like something that I say is important to other people. But so thank you. But yeah, I mean, I heard a comedian once, I think it was George Carlin, and they said a joke that was like, life is short, and then they made fun of it. And they said, you know, life is short. Well, what are you ever going to do that's longer? So, you know, that always stayed with me.
That's so funny.
But then there's also this, and actually during the filming of that documentary, I had myself convinced that I was using Adderall for production. Maybe it was a kind of a year or two long process. So maybe towards the end of it, I knew I had a drug problem. I can't remember all the exact details.
Right.
But like, I was actually high on Adderall in some of those scenes, you know? So I was struggling a lot with addiction and, you know, letting other things control me. And I remember during that period of time, and still, but definitely then, it was really intense, you know, saying that life is so long.
Yeah.
It was like, I knew, that Adderall pointed out to me that no matter what it is, if that I can get in the grips of the power of some sort of substance, that like it's in charge, and that like making it not in charge is nearly impossible, and it's miserable, and it's so hard, and there's so much pain, and there's so much suffering, and there's so much like, it's just, so I knew I had to go every day of my life for the rest of my life that I'm alive, trying to fight this devil.
Right.
You know, thinking, you know, when you really, if you know people who have addiction problems or alcoholism or whatever, like, it's scary because at the end of the day, like, that's what's going to kill them, you know? 99.9% of the time, it's going to kill you. So, and then the statistics of the amount of people who struggle from addiction and get sober, it's very low, and stay sober, it's very low. Look at COVID. I'll give you one story. There was a friend of mine in the sober community actually helped me get sober a couple times. His friend was sober for like 20 years. COVID hits, she drinks again, ends up dying. I don't know if it led to other drugs or exact details of it. Right. 20 years she's sober.
Wow. So
as someone who suffers from that disease, I might be sitting here right now. I'm so good. I'm feeling great. We're chatting. I'm healthy. What's my life look like in 20 years?
Right.
So when you start thinking that long-term stuff, it's kind of scary. That's why people are encouraged to live every day, one day at a time. You know, my fiance's dad actually asked me, he said, and I asked him if I could marry his daughter, which was probably the only time in a long time I've been extremely nervous. Like, I was so nervous. I was like, and he said to me, he's like, should I be worried about your past, right? Meaning like the alcoholism, the substance abuse, whatever. And it's home for them, you know, because Carly's brother suffered from heroin addiction. He had passed away recently, actually. But
so sorry.
Yeah. But so when he asked me that, I'm like, man, this sucks, because I'm answering this to a man who not only cares about his daughter, his only daughter,
yeah,
but he has a son that struggles with addiction, right?
Right.
That he's helped for his whole entire life, right? So I'm like, how do I answer this? And I just was real. I just like, only thing I had to say was real. I was like, look, all I can promise you is the same thing I could promise me. And that is that today I feel great and I'm sober.
Yeah.
That's what I said. Because that's it.
Good. That's
my
beautiful.
natural inclination is to be like, well, I'm so great.
I've got this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm so strong. But like, that's not true.
Yeah.
Today I'm so strong. Today I'm so great. Today I'm sober. That's it. So
I think that's really admirable of you to say that.
yeah.
Because
no,
a lot of people
it.
would just try and say like, oh, I'm fine, I got this. But
Yeah.
I don't think that that's really supportive of you. And it's also unfair to the people in your life.
Yeah. And I've tried to,
And it's unrealistic for them to expect that of anybody.
And actually, you know, in turn, he's a wonderful man, and I'm excited for him to be my father-in-law. And he said, no matter what, we support you. So
That's good.
like, it was a beautiful conversation, but nonetheless, addiction is just something that people can suffer from, but doesn't have to control their life.
Yeah.
So however they became an addict, however they became an alcoholic, whatever the problem is, like whatever their history is, whatever their childhood is, like, you know, there's a community of people who can help you and you can move forward, you know, but that person needs to want to find the change in themselves. You can't do it for anybody else.
Right. What are your biggest things that keep you going and keep you strong?
The number one thing is all the work I've done to understand me, like to understand Michael Reuter. Like, who
Great.
are you?
Yeah.
Who do you want to be? Where are you? Where have you been? Like, you ask yourself all these questions and you can start then making the right changes, right? But like, nobody can give you a roadmap where to go. Like, you got to go by yourself. And like, you only know where you're going based on like where you've been. So like, I know roads I've taken in the past and where they lead. So like, I have all these pattern recognitions and this history and this stuff, like, you know, so I'd say learning about myself, number one thing, and like understanding me, right? For example, I don't know, I should say this is important, but it's not okay in the sober community. In the sober community, you need to be 100% abstinence from all drugs and alcohol. So your disclaimers you made at the beginning of this podcast were very important for me to be able to be transparent and honest.
Yeah.
I agree with that. You recover in community, you need to be abstinent, and abstinence is absolutely the 100% best thing. For me, I like to smoke weed. Like, I don't like it. I don't love it, but I can smoke weed.
Okay.
Right? So I'm California sober, I guess people would say, if they want to put definitions on this stuff.
Got it.
But I know for me, like, I don't wake up and want marijuana. I don't want marijuana in the middle of the day. I don't want it, you know, regularly. I don't want it every day.
Right.
You know, I know when I do have it, it doesn't lead me to doing anything or wanting anything else. There's no gateway to anything worse, except for like I eat inappropriately, which I allow myself to do at times. Right. So it's all, my point for saying this is that I'm not saying if you have a problem with alcohol, cocaine, drugs, pills, that you can smoke weed. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you have a problem with anything or you want to make any changes about your life, you need to understand you.
Yeah.
And how can you live every day happy and healthy, right? That's it. So I found that recipe for me for right now and what works, you know?
Okay.
Maybe one day it'll become a problem. I don't know.
Right.
You know, but right now I do know. So understanding yourself, I think, is the most important thing. And then comes balance, work-life balance, family balance, hobbies, all that kind of stuff, you know? I think deep work to be able to control your emotions is very important. Not like whenever something happens to you, not to get emotionally charged, like try to remain neutral and then respond appropriately, right? Some things might really hurt or whatever, but at the end of the day, when you start to understand that no one's really doing anything to you, They're really just, it's just a reflection of themselves.
Yeah.
There's nothing that really should be able to hurt you or upset you in this world,
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
no matter who you are, they're doing that. So
Right.
how is it doing it to you, right? Like we're just a variable in someone else's equation and we can only respond for ourselves. So I think understanding yourself, having a balance, one thing that really has helped me, of all these different cups you want to fill, like work, money, hobbies, relationships, whatever. One thing for me that is so important that I try and keep filled at 100% all the time that I work on is my relationships with people that I love and care about. And even people which I love and care about that work with me.
Mm-hmm.
So like I know I'm happier and feeling better when my relationship with the people that are important to me
Are thriving.
Mm-hmm. And that is my strongest pillar.
Yeah.
Like the relationships with others. It's not like how much money I'm making, how the business is doing, how my fitness is going. Like all that stuff's important. And
Yeah.
when it's more full, I'm doing better. And when it's down, I'm in a worse mood or whatever. It dictates how I feel, right? But that relationship one is like my strong like structure, and it starts with my family.
Got it.
So I keep those relationships, and I love my family, and that's the most important thing in the world to me.
Yeah. So I guess we can kind of wrap on what's next for you. I know we talked in the beginning a little bit about, getting into doing more YouTube. As someone that follows you and follows your work, it seems like you really enjoy creating content and making people laugh.
I really do understand the power of like sharing, the power of storytelling. For a long time, like I didn't tell my story about my uncle being killed and how I felt and like what I struggled with because I didn't think I was important enough. It's like, no one's going to care. You're not important enough. Or it's been 5 years since your uncle passed, or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, or it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like you should be over it by now. That was my thought process, right? But it was completely
False.
wrong. I was
Yeah.
completely wrong. It was completely false. It was all reality made up in my own head.
Yeah.
So like the power of storytelling, I think, is an amazing thing. I really enjoy. It was hard for me to tell that story.
Yeah.
And also it's hard for me to admit all these things. The more and more I did it, I realized the better and better it made me feel selfishly. But on the other side of it, I realized what it does for other people. There's a lot of times when I've put stuff out and received messages, the most powerful one I ever got was someone who saw something I posted and then reached out and said they were wanted to kill themselves. And the reason they told their family was because of what I posted. So that's when I really learned the power of sharing your story, what it can do for other people. Because people who are suffering feel alone and in the dark. And when they realize like they can connect with somebody else, whether it be an artist or someone else's story or whatever, me, you, doesn't matter, right? Like, well, then they can be helped.
Yeah.
Because they see, wow, you've been able to get to hear from there, so can I.
You've overcome something. Maybe I can too.
Yeah, you can too, whoever you are. Yeah. Everybody can. You just have to want to do it for you. So it's doing great things for me, and it's doing great things for other people. But I want to be able to wake up every day and be Michael, and I want to be whoever I want to be. So my girlfriend's, fiance, her brother passed, right? And the other night I'm just like being really goofy, and she's very blue, right? I said, do you want me to be blue with you, or do you want me to make you laugh? I was like, because me, I got to be goofy. But she said, make me laugh. So I'm like being the goofy me, because I have to be. I love that. That's who I want to be majority of my time. Sometimes I have to be serious and I have to be a boss and a leader. And then when I'm telling my story and sharing about trauma and death and grief and things like that, then I have to be like a different version, But my favorite version, my most enjoyable version to be is like entertaining and comedy and like making people laugh. I love that. That's my favorite thing to do.
I appreciate you so much for coming here and sharing more of your story.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, and where can they watch this documentary if they want to see more? Well,
you can find me at 2936 O'Donnell Street, Legacy Settlement Services. No, you can find me on Instagram at Michael Andrew Reuter and Facebook at Michael Andrew Reuter.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Livy. I appreciate it too. I'm grateful to be your first guest, and I look forward to seeing where you are with your podcast in 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months.
Thank you. I'm excited too.
Have a good weekend.
You too.